The Bucs and Panthers square off on Saturday with the fate of the NFC South hanging in the balance. That and more on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Carolina Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. We want to thank you for making this your first listener view every single day. I am James Yarcho, the host of Locked On Bucs. He is, of course, Julian Council, the host of Locked On Panthers, and we are here with you 5 days a week along with the everydayers. And for that, we want to share our appreciation for your continued support of these shows. Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Julian, it feels like we just did this.
Yeah, because we did 2 weeks ago, and the stakes were still the same stakes, except not really, as the game on Saturday, depending on who wins, and if it's Tampa, we're going to have to wait until Sunday to find out who is actually going to win the NFC South between these two teams. So, yeah, having a ton of fun here the last couple of weeks in this whole roller coaster season for Carolina, while looking at Tampa and just wondering, why are you the way you are? Because you told me a couple weeks ago the 8-9 scenario where all three of Carolina, Atlanta, and Tampa could be 8-9. The Panthers would win in that scenario and go to the playoffs. I didn't want to buy into it because I did not want to believe that Tampa was capable of losing to a Quinn Ewers-led Miami Dolphins team. So I apologize to you, James Yarcho, because I should have listened to you when you told me, oh, this Bucs team, yeah, they can lose that game. And damn it, did they lose that game on Sunday.
Yep, it was entertaining for everyone involved. But yeah, you just mentioned it. We know what's at stake here. The Panthers win, and they are the NFC South champions, heading to the playoffs for the first time since 2017. Their first division
or tie.
But if they win, this is locked in. It's good to go. Their first division crown in a decade. For the Bucs, it's whether or not they can finally snap this awful skid that they're on and make the postseason for the 6th consecutive year, making it the longest playoff streak of any team in the NFL, as well as winning their 5th straight division crown. Obviously, this is the biggest storyline for both of these teams. What is the feeling around the Carolina Panthers right now?
You would think after the game on Sunday, once they found out that the Bucs had lost, that those guys would think that they missed out on an opportunity and they'd be really kicking themselves, and it'd be kind of a sullen locker room atmosphere. That really was not the case. Jaycee Horn, he said, wouldn't want it any other way than to have your division rival, a winner-take-all, well, they thought potentially a winner-take-all game on Saturday coming up here against the Bucs. Like, that's just the way this team has been, where they're making it so much harder than it needs to be. Now, obviously, Sunday against Seattle is a missed opportunity, but that's a 13-3 Seattle Seahawks team. So not a team that Carolina really should have beaten. So I don't really look at it that way. The game they lost against New Orleans, where that locker room, they were depressed. Like, JC did not want to talk to the media. Mike Jackson didn't want to talk to the media because they felt like they had blown it. They didn't feel like they blew it on Sunday. So they were at least aware that Seattle, even with the turnovers, is a better team than them, but they knew what was right there in front of them. All right, you blew it against New Orleans. You blew it against Seattle. If you just win this game or tie, you're going to finally be in the playoffs for the first time in 8 years and be hosting a playoff game, winning division for the first time in a decade. So they are looking at the opportunity. They're excited about it, and they're not looking at their missed opportunities as, oh, man, we really blew it. They're ready for this one, and I think it should be a pretty solid game and effort from Carolina on Saturday.
Yeah, I would expect the same, and it's amazing to me that we're going to have a game after the Bucs Panthers that could decide the #1 seed in the NFC, and both of those teams lost to Tampa. That's where we are right now. And so, yeah, the energy around the Bucs, Baker said the exact same thing. Wouldn't want it any other way. It's been the same cliches for the last 2 months. Our backs are against the wall. Every game's a playoff game. We don't need to worry about what Dave Canales and the Panthers are doing. We just have to worry about doing what we do. Yada, 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 yada. That battle cry has led to 7 losses in the last 8 weeks. So it's been more of the same there. And yeah, if the Panthers win or tie, they win the division, period. If the Bucs win, now you got to wait until Sunday to find out who is going to win this division, because the Falcons are going to Falcon and create chaos everywhere. And you and I were talking before the episode, it would be the most Buccaneers thing of all time for the Bucs to win on Saturday and then lose the division because the Falcons beat the Saints in the final week of the year, when that game doesn't really matter for either of them outside of Tyler Shuck potentially clinching the offensive rookie of the year over both Teterow and McMillan and Emeka Egbuka. Obviously, Emeka's second half of the season led to much faith in the offensive rookie of the year voting. But yeah, that's where this is. This is a Buccaneers team that could have locked up the division a month ago, and instead are scratching and clawing and fighting to try to get in with a losing record. It's
it's wild to me, man, on like this side of it, because I keep looking, and what they've lost 8 out of 10, 7 out of 8. I just don't understand how. I get the injuries, but a team that has Baker Mayfield, who has been banged up, they get Mike Evans back. They just have, I still feel like, the most talent in this division, and they've allowed Carolina to come back to them. And now they're in a position where, like, I was actually looking at, because you talk about that game on Sunday, depending on the result on Saturday, it's possible that Tampa finishes third in this division, which is just crazy that that's even a possibility. Like, looking at it, if Carolina wins and New Orleans wins, Tampa finishes third. If Carolina wins and Atlanta wins, basically, if just Carolina wins, Tampa's going to finish in third place in the division. And that's not a scenario that we would have thought going into the season. And certainly after the first 2 months of the season, hell, maybe a month ago, do we think that was going to happen? Maybe you thought that was happening. I certainly did not think that was going to be the case. And it's crazy that we've gotten there. And I've had friends who are longtime Panther fans, and one of them is just, I mean, he's a masochist. This dude still sits there and watches every single Hornets game. We keep begging him, stop doing this to yourself. But he's the one saying, oh yeah, I'm fully prepared for maximum pain. Losing to Seattle when they could have won the division that game, then losing to Tampa, sitting there on Sunday begging for Atlanta to win, and then New Orleans taking the victory instead. So we'll see. I feel like it's going to come down to Sunday, because neither one of these teams wants to win this division at this point. I think Carolina probably more than Tampa based off of their actions, but they've just been Jekyll Hyde for the last 8 weeks of the year, while Tampa very clearly, I don't know, maybe they just want to get to Cabo. I don't know what's going on with the Bucs, but yeah, fun times in the NFC South.
Well, and some of the glass half full Buccaneers fan optimists are like, okay, if this finishes out the way we think it's going to finish out, well, now the Bucs finally don't have a first place schedule. Finally, next year, maybe things will ease up a little bit for them. No, you want to know what third in the division gets them? It gets you the Commanders, it gets you the Rams, and it gets you the Kansas City Chiefs in the bonus game. Like, why? Why is this happening?
But will it get you a new head coach, James? Because you did tell me that you feel like no matter how this ends, Todd Bowles, you're out of here. And it just has gotten worse since our last conversation.
Well, you have Ian Rappaport spinning an opinion into a fact of, does this sound like a head coach that deserves to be fired? Jeremy Fowler comes out and he talks about how, the Bucs may not move on from Todd Bowles because it could signify an admitting that they need to rebuild, and maybe they don't, the ownership doesn't want to pay the buyout because Bowles just got an extension. To me, all of that is noise. I don't know how any ownership group of any professional sports team could look at the way that this season ended and say, yeah, we're going to give this guy one more shot. It just doesn't make any sense, but time will tell. The Glazer family will sit down with Jason Light after the season is officially complete. They'll evaluate everything and start to make some decisions. But again, this is an ownership group that fired Tony Dungy for not getting far enough in the playoffs. They fired John Gruden for a 4-game losing streak that led to them missing the postseason. How does losing 8 out of 9 get you to keep your job? I don't get it.
You tell me. We'll see. Yeah, I just kind of asked, like, what is Tampa building towards at this point in time? like what direction are they headed? But very clearly, it feels like they're headed in the wrong direction under Todd Bowles. So
yeah,
we'll never know what would have happened had Liam Cohen not disappeared in the night to Jacksonville, because I know that's probably a lot of Bucs fans thinking to themselves, we could have had that guy, even though you would have had no idea that he was actually going to be this solid a head coach, at least right now. It could always end up being a disaster later on in Jacksonville. Right now, looking pretty good.
Yeah, a lot of Bucs fans super excited that Dave Canales and Liam Cohen could both be in the playoffs while the Bucs are sitting at home. All right, we're going to get into key matchups as far as who's going to win this game, what's it going to take. That is all coming up next on a Crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs. Nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all in one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Thank you again for making Locked On Panthers and Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Julian, first go around, it was a close game, came down to the fourth quarter. And there were some key matchups in that one that we highlighted that came to fruition. You take a look at the second go around with everything on the line in Tampa, a road game for Carolina. What's the first kind of key matchup that you're looking at that the Panthers need to take advantage of to get this win?
Yeah, really excited to see the matchup against the secondary in Carolina against that wide receiver core yet again in Tampa. You look back at week 16, Mike Evans, aside from that reception early on, didn't really do a ton in that game. Same thing with Emeka Egbuka, had that one explosive play late in the game, but he was pretty much neutralized in that. So Jaycee Horn, Mike Jackson have had really good moments, especially Mike Jackson of late. Now, JC, though, has had some tough moments recently. He had a really bad face mask on a 3rd and 20 last Sunday that led to a Seattle Seahawks touchdown on that drive. Gave up a touchdown to Chris Olave in that game a couple weeks ago in New Orleans, where they thought they had blown their opportunity to win the division. So really want to see JC in kind of this standalone primetime spot find a way to show the nation why he was deserving of his second straight Pro Bowl nod and go out there and lock down someone like Mike Evans when matched up against him. And same thing with Chris Godwin when he's up against him and Emeka Egbuka. So the Panthers defensively did a really good job against this wide receiver core in Tampa, but you got to imagine they're going to find more ways to get the ball into those guys' hands and find some explosive plays, which was not the case at all, where I think it was like fourth quarter, Baker only had like 80-something yards, like 103. Like, it was something crazy. And I couldn't believe that was the case when you look at them. That should be an offense that goes boom. And it really has not been the case over the last, like 2 months.
Yeah, explosive plays have been just non-existent for this offense. And I'm glad you brought up, how the secondary did against these Bucs wide receivers, because the first key matchup that I'm highlighting is Josh Grizzard versus himself. The Bucs ran the ball 33 times in that first meeting. They ran for 169 yards. That's great. But Baker never got into a rhythm throwing to anyone not named Mike Evans. But even then, it was a career low in receiving yards for Mike when he has at least 5 receptions. So Baker or Grizz, or a combination of the two, just would not push the ball down the field despite having opportunities to go to. And one of the plays that I specifically harped on my live reaction, I went back, I watched the all 22. There was a dump off to Rachaad White in the second half where Egbuka had a free release at the line of scrimmage, runs a post right up, up the seam, and he's open. That's almost a 40-yard touchdown if Baker lets it go. Yeah. And instead, it's a dump off to Rachaad. Now, the Bucs ended up scoring on that drive, so it didn't kill them. But you go back and you look at a play like that as a missed opportunity to maybe spark this offense a little bit, get these guys a little more, excited and a little more confident, and it just wasn't there. So, Baker finished with 145 yards. He had a brutal interception at the end of the game, which I still maintain was Mike Evans' fault. But you're already in field goal range. You're going for a win instead of a tie, and that's the result. So Evans and Godwin combined for 15 of 26 total targets in that game. Abuka had 2 targets. McMillan had 3. Otten had 2. You have to find a way to spread that ball around with all these weapons, and Grizzard has just not been able to figure out how to feed all these mouths, and it's causing the offense to stall when, as you said, they should have explosive plays all over the field all game long.
Yeah, and they have enough talent to where against Carolina, they're going to keep Jaycee Horn on one side. They're going to keep Mike Jackson on one side, depending on the field, the boundary. That's just the way that they run their defense here. Jerry Rivera, the DC, does. And that's been something that's really frustrated a lot of fans throughout his 3 years as the defensive coordinator. When you have JC, a Pro Bowl corner, why not have him matched up against Mike Evans all the time? Because that one touchdown Mike had was against Mike Jackson, who is a physical corner in his own right, but not the same kind of physical presence as a Jaycee Horn or the talent of Jaycee Horn, even though if you look at PFF, they actually favor Mike Jack over JC. So when you have a receiving core with the talent that Tampa has, you would think they'd be able to exploit guys like Shaw Smith-Wade and some of the other dudes at safety like a Nick Scott and find some of those matchups. So I'm very curious to see again against this wide receiver core, how the corners, but also how the safeties match up. One other thing I'm looking at defensively for Carolina is the linebacker core. They're in a tough spot here. Trevin Wallace is out for the rest of the season after having shoulder surgery. He was their green dot. He missed last week. He really has missed the last 3 games as he went on IR last week. Christian Roseboom's now in there as a green dot, an experienced linebacker, played a ton of snaps last year in LA, helping the Rams get to the divisional round. Now he's the main guy. Claude Sherlis, who started a couple games this season, was supposed to be the guy next to him, but right now he has not practiced this week. Now, mind you, on Tuesday and on Wednesday, they both had walkthroughs. So not pads on, walkthroughs, but he has not practiced this week. And typically, as you know, if you don't practice the first 2 weeks of the week, or first 2 practices of the week, you're probably not going to play. So if Sherlis is not out there, that means a guy like Chris Barnes, who is a veteran, he would be in line to likely start, or the rookie Ban Martin Scott. And Isaiah Simmons, he's not on the active roster, but Dave Canales said on Monday that they see him as more of a safety than a linebacker. So that's a problem as far as just the linebackers being able to fill those gaps. What they get a defensive line that, of course, has Derek Brown. Looks like Turk Wharton, who's missed the last couple of games of a hamstring, he'll be back out there. Bobby Brown, Ashawn Robinson, some good guys who can stop the run, but your linebacker play needs to be good against a guy like Bucky Irving. So while they ran it a ton last time and had success, I wouldn't blame them for wanting to do that more, especially knowing the kind of issues that Carolina's having injury-wise at linebacker.
Yeah, well, and then, of course, the other concern for Bucs fans would be the interior of that offensive line. Miami had a lot of success against the run as well as blitzing Baker with those linebackers coming through the interior, just because you're relegated to third string third string guards there up the middle. So that is also something to definitely keep an eye on. For me, real quick, it's simple for the Bucs on the defensive side. Minimize the impact of the running backs. Yeah. You did a really great job of that the first time around. Both Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard each had under 30 rushing yards. The problem is the Bucs have allowed a league-high 836 yards to running backs in the passing game. That's where Bryce Young is really going to be able to take advantage of this Bucs defense and extend some drives. So Dowdle and Hubbard combined for just 7 targets in the first game, only 21 yards through the air. If you're going to give yourself a chance as the Bucs, you have to find a way to stop those 2 guys. And you did it. You did it the first time. You have to be able to replicate that success and put all of the pressure on Bryce Young to push the ball down the field. You also have to win the turnover battle, which the Bucs haven't done really over the course of the last 2 months. Yeah. So that's the situation. They're already going to feel the pressure with a young head coach, a young quarterback in a game that could win you the division. Try to take advantage of that and hope that maybe you can force Bryce Young into a mistake that can turn the game.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out, because obviously offensively for Carolina, it was not great on Sunday. 16 passing yards for Bryce in the first half, 54 total. I had to do a double take, man. When I went live, I was in the press box and I was like, wait, hold on. This stat pack has to be wrong. Like, I know what I just watched. I know it wasn't good, but was it really this bad? And it was. So if they can find some shots as well, because Jalen Coker, Tedder McMillan, both those guys played really well in that game a couple weeks ago. Those are really the only two receivers that I think Carolina can trust at this point in time. Xavier Legette has been not good. I'll just say that. Let's not say anything more at this point in time. He's not been good for them. Maybe Jimmy Horn Jr. can have an explosive play on a jet sweep, but if they're looking just at downfield passing game, finding anything there, it's got to be those two young guys in this big spot. Now, T-Mac, he was on the injury report on Sunday with an illness. He did play in that game. Dave said he was fine. T-Mac said he was fine. Bryce said he was fine. Whatever. You didn't do anything in that game outside of like that 5-yard dump off on a 4th and 16 when you're like on the shot of your own goal line that they did late in that game. He's got to be a big piece of this game if they're going to win. And we'll talk about the running game here momentarily, but after the break course, but like that's really the passing game. Bryce to T-Mac, Bryce to Jalen Coker, like that's got to be something that they exploit as far as the matchup wise on Saturday afternoon/evening.
Yeah, and I was a little wrong on shouting out Tommy Tremble. It was Mitchell Evans. It was still a tight end that had an impact in the game. I just picked the wrong one. But how do we see this game shaking out? What do these teams have to do in order to potentially put themselves in a position to win the division? That is coming up next on a Crossover Thursday. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. And the new Stacks feature lets you choose the same player up to 3 times in one lineup, like more on Baker Mayfield's passing yards, touchdowns, and rushing yards. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Wrapping things up here on a Crossover Thursday, James Yarcho of Locked On Bucs, Julian Council, Locked On Panthers, and here it is, where everybody thought that these two teams would be at the end of the season, battling it out in Week 18 for a chance to go to the postseason. Julian, what do the Panthers have to do to clinch the division and win this game?
Yeah, first and foremost, it comes down to turnovers. You mentioned it back in that game, back in Week 16. The lone turnover of the game was Baker Mayfield's interception where he and Mike Evans weren't on the same page. You blame Mike. It doesn't matter. Turnover, that cost him. Lathan Ransom gets it, having a little bit of a redemption story after the week prior where he hit Tyler Shuck late, and that led to the Saints being in field goal position to win that game. So that's going to be a massive key. I look back to the game they just had on Sunday. Seattle's a team that has the second most turnovers in the league this season. They knew that a guy like Sam Darnold was going to give them one, and he gave them multiple. An interception, had a fumble, honestly should add an interception on the first play of the game for Seattle, and that would have changed the entire complexion of the game for Carolina. So they've got to get those takeaways. And when they got the takeaways last week, they got 3 points. When Seattle got their takeaways, the interception from Bryce, the strip of Chuba Hubbard, they turned those into touchdowns. And that's so important for Carolina to be able to take advantage of those turnovers if they get them, but also to hold on to the ball. I think back to 2022 in this game where it was for the NFC South division title. Now that was winner take all in that scenario. Carolina got up to 14-0 lead, but then they turned it over 3 times, and that's why they lost that day. So you cannot have those catastrophic turnovers that lead typically to 4 to 7 points for your opponent. And another thing, and this probably is the biggest thing outside of turnovers, is Bryce Young's got to rise to the occasion, man. You look back at the weeks, that 3-week stretch he had against the Rams, against the Saints, and also against the Bucs in that game in week 16. If you look at EPA per dropback, that was the best 3-week stretch of his career. Look back at last week, he had a negative 0.54 EPA per dropback. That's the second worst of his career as a starter behind what happened in week 2 a year ago against the Chargers. So he went from having his best stretch of his career to one of the worst games of his career on Sunday. Like, that cannot happen again on Saturday. It could, I guess, if Atlanta wins on Sunday, but if you want to take care of it on your own, he's got to rise to the occasion. I felt like he was doing that. He was not the problem in Seattle. He was great against LA. He was good against Tampa as well. He was playing good ball until he wasn't against what was obviously and is one of the best defenses in the NFL, and certainly the best defense they're going to face all season long in Seattle. But this is why you drafted Bryce Young, for these kind of situations. I tell my listeners and viewers all the time, we can't use every single game as a referendum on Bryce Young. We can use this one as a referendum on Bryce Young, because this is the type of game that you give up DJ Moore, that you give up Christian McCaffrey, that you give up those first-round picks to get up there to take a guy who can help you not just win these games, but then win games next month, or yes, this month, later on, next weekend and beyond. Like, that's why you went out there and got Bryce Young. So if he lays an egg, turns the ball over, you got to ask real questions about whether this can be your guy moving forward. It's the first time he's been in this kind of situation as far as potentially win or take all. But man, it's huge for him. Like, that's what I'm looking at. So turnovers and really Bryce Young rising to the occasion. Those are the things that Carolina's got to take care of if they're going to win this game on Saturday, and not really wait for Atlanta or New Orleans to dictate what's going to happen as far as who represents this awful division in the playoffs next weekend.
Yeah, I think Bryce laid an egg last week on purpose, because they knew it was the Panthers' loss week. And they knew that Tampa fell on their alternating win weeks. Right. So they're like, who cares? Let's put nothing on film that could potentially give Tampa even the slightest chance of winning this game. So, I mean, kudos to the big brain move of Bryce Young. For the Bucs, it's real simple. And I've said the same stuff in this segment of these crossovers all year long. You know, you take care of the football. You don't make stupid mistakes, things like that. It's real simple. Don't beat yourself. This team has made beating yourself artwork throughout the second half of this season. You have a defense that allows one small mistake to turn into an absolute avalanche of ineptitude. You have an offense that cannot seem to push the ball down the field, whether it's because they don't trust the protection for Baker, whether the players don't trust or agree with the play calling, whatever the case may be. You will sit down to watch this game if you are a Carolina Panthers fan, and you will see the Bucs take their opening possession right down the field and score, and you're going to think, oh God, here we go. Just wait for it. In the words of Barney Stinson, wait for it, because the Bucs will find a way to push themselves out of scoring range. They will make stupid mistakes along the offensive line. They will make stupid mistakes like offensive pass interference or an illegal blindside block or ineligible man downfield, and the offense will completely stall not just that drive, but the next 2 drives, because that has been the MO of this Todd Bowles-led team over the last 2 months. You allow a snowball to turn into an avalanche, and it completely derails the entire roster. So if you're the Bucs, be a goldfish. I just quoted Barney Stinson. Let's go Ted Lasso. Be a goldfish. You make a mistake, forget about it. All right? You have to move on to the next play and not allow that one mistake to dictate the rest of your game.
Yeah, and you go back to week 16 as a Panthers fan, and that's exactly how it played out. Opening drive of the game for Carolina, if Rico Dowdle didn't trip over his own 2 feet, that's a touchdown. Instead, you found yourself down 7-3 after Mike Evans was able to win against Mike Jackson. And I'm sure there were plenty of people in that building like, oh, man, here we go. Mike Evans is back. He's a known Carolina Panthers killer, and he's going to kill us again. And that was not the case. As you're right, that Bucs offense didn't really do anything, and the Panthers defense able to close out that game on that Sunday, and Bryce Young made enough plays. So we'll see, man. We'll see. I look at this, and I think Carolina should win this game. Well, mainly because the pattern tells you they're going to win this game, and that was the thing coming off of the loss against New Orleans. Well, hey, look at it. It's been win-loss since week 7, week 8 when they beat the Jets and they lost to the Bills and then came back that next week and beat the Packers, the first shocking win of the season. If that's the case, then okay, they'll beat Tampa, they'll lose Seattle, and they'll beat Tampa again, and that's all it needed to do. So looking at the pattern, yeah, I guess I'll take Carolina in this game. And also just looking at the way these teams have been trending, this is a game the Panthers honestly should win. Tampa's just, I mean, they've lost 7 out of 8 of 10. They've been banged up. Baker is on the injury report of a right shoulder injury now, which is his throwing shoulder for those who don't know, which you all should as Bucs and Panther fans, having him been your quarterback at a point in time the last couple of years. So that's another thing to look at. Carolina should win. They really should. It's just, we'll see. Because if it's going to be a shootout, I have my concerns. I look on the defensive side of the ball. There's a lot of guys on that defense that have Super Bowl rings who have been in these spots before. The main 2 guys who haven't been are Derek Brown and Jaycee. I'm not worried about Derek. Jaycee, he could make a mistake. Offensively, you got outside the offensive line, which is obviously a big part of it. Your pass catchers, they've never been in this spot. Your quarterback has never been in this spot. Your running back really have never been in this spot. So how do your skill position players come into this game? How do they handle the pressure, the environment? If Bucs fans are still even fired up for this game, I don't know how they feel about it because I think they're probably over it too. But they'll take a home playoff game because why the hell not? But we'll see. Should hopefully be a fun one on Saturday. And Lord knows I really do not want to watch Falcons Saints on Sunday afternoon. So let's just get it over with.
Falcons and Saints fans don't even want to watch Falcons and Saints. And yeah, inexplicably, the Bucs are yet again favorites. They have not been underdogs since the Rams game. I don't know how.
Let me say this because I looked on Sunday at FanDuel and they still had Tampa favored. Like when they had it posted for the division, they still had Tampa favored. And I understood it from the fact that, like, okay, Tampa's at home and the whole Carolina Panthers of all, but the Panthers had more paths back then to the playoffs. And you even look at it today, where in this game, they've taken off who's going to win the NFC South now, but who in this game, Tampa's favored. Well, I would think that if you had it posted as far as who's going to win the division, Carolina should be favored because they have 2 paths to the playoffs, while Tampa, their only path is winning this game. Like, that's the crazy thing when I look back at it. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, man.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for sure. All right. Well, we will be back with our final preview for this game on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, make sure that you are, following these shows on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on Twitter. Julian is at Julian Council. I'm at @JYarcho_Bucs. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you so much for joining us here on a Crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.